So, the manga translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 369, and let's just say that this is going to be a banger of a chapter with action, reveals, more about the second user's quirk, and an unexpected twist at the end of the chapter that you would not expect. But first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my review of My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 369, titled Many Years. And there was a lot that we got in this chapter. Not only did we get a lot of cool action in this chapter, but we did get a small backstory of All For One and the second user, as well as potentially getting more about the second user's quirk, and a very much unexpected reveal at the end of the chapter that kind of shows where the story is moving forward in this pace or in this way. So, let's just dive right into the chapter review and talk a little bit more about this chapter. For most of this chapter, it's just pretty much a fight between Deku and All For One inside of Shigaraki's body, where we get to see Deku pretty much go through all of his techniques, using all of his quirks in this fight in succession of one another, as one after another. We see Deku landing massive blows upon this new individual that we will be referring to as just Shigaraki, with probably the most smashes that we've seen in a single attack, called Detroit Quintuple Smash. And it's so great that the smash doesn't even fit on 2 pages, which cool. There's a lot of just cool action in this chapter, but there's also some smaller moments in this chapter as well. For starters, we get a better understanding of how this quirk of the second user works, and that it's actually, from what we're seeing with the translations, called gear shift, which I thought that this has to have been the case. I sort of second guessed myself that this was actually the correct name in the actual video proper, which we will be doing a follow-up to that video. I promise you we will, with the information that we have in this chapter. But pretty much what is revealed in this chapter is really All For One's connection with the second user and the second user's quirk, and how it has become significantly more powerful than it was in the past, and how All For One may not have known that this was going to be a byproduct of One For All boosting up the quirk, at least to this extent. Because what Deku does with this quirk is just wild, and when it was explained that it can control the speed of an object, it literally means it can control the speed of the object, even its velocity and inertia. Because when Deku shifts gears in this chapter, going from overdrive to, I believe, gear 1 or the lowest gear, he just stops in midair. And it's explained that it ignores the inertia, so he just stops in the middle of the air with very little to minimal drawbacks, which is broken if that is the case. And it's even explained that because of One For All boosting up the power of the second user's gear shift, that it's able to bend and warp reality and the laws of physics, which is just... But that's not even like the part that I want to talk about a little bit more about, and it's really the connection that One For All has with All For One and the second user with All For One. Because we did get a small flashback at the beginning of this chapter, pretty much showing the fight and the confrontation between the second user and All For One, and how All For One, even though he has the second user by the throat, dead to rights, he's crying. And as he's talking about how this quirk is very useless and that it can't get more powerful than it was during that time, and how it was only able to control tiny objects at that moment, which now it can literally control every single cell in Deku's body, that it was trivial and small. And I really want to talk about why All For One was crying in this scene. And I think the implication is that he's crying in the scene because at this moment, he probably had to kill his younger brother. Now, we don't see Yoichi's body anywhere in the rubble, but you could say that the implication for why he's crying is because he's had to fight the second user, and that he's overwhelmed by grief as well as sadness at the fact that his brother is dead. Now, He may have died in the middle of the fight, so he may not have actually killed his brother, or maybe he did kill his brother, but he felt so much remorse for it because no matter how you look at it, even though he has done horrible things even to his own brother, he never said that he hated him, and if anything, he has said that he has loved him even with these horrible things done upon him. So it just makes sense that if his brother died in the fight to obtain One for All, or even to return his brother back to him, that if his brother were to die in this moment, he would obviously cry, especially if this is All for One in his prime, where he has more of these more emotional moments besides just being happy all the time. So that's a possibility of why he's crying here, but what is even more interesting is how even during this moment where he's chastising the second user about being weak and insignificant, we see that the second user smiles because he was able to get one over on All for One in this moment by already passing his quirk on to someone else when All for One had him dead to right. So this just shows that All for One, even when he was in his prime many years in the past, has always overestimated the heroes, or should I say underestimated the heroes, and has always led to him not being able to obtain One for All, which is probably going to be the result of this entire story, that he's going to underestimate the heroes once again, and that's going to eventually lead to his downfall, which will be through saving Shigaraki Tomura. So yeah, this is a very interesting chapter, and like I said, we get to see Deku go out and use all of his stops. He uses Gear Shift to stop himself in the midair. He uses Smoke Screen to block his movements and to block Shigaraki's movements or his ability to predict where Deku's going to be, along with Danger Sense and Fajin to deliver a very crucial blow on this Shigaraki, destroying his armor. And while this is all happening, we do have a small panel that is showing us how everyone is doing in this fight. We see Mirio carrying Nejire away to safety. We see Tamaki maybe hidden, if not dead at this moment. We see Edshot trying to once again save the life of Bakugo. And as all of this is happening, we just get a page of the fingers and the armor covering Shigaraki just being broken apart by this individual that we will be calling Deku. So overall, this is a very amazing fight, and they are doing very heavy damage to Shigaraki in this moment. But something interesting happens at the end of this chapter, as it's revealed that probably Deku won't be able to keep up this battle for much longer because of the strain that this quirk is putting on his body. We have a monologue most likely of All for One inside of this new individual of Shigaraki, thinking everything is not going his way, that he wasn't able to really go all out, that he wasn't even able to use all of his new quirks, as we get a sort of symbolism very similar to One for All appearing on this one page behind Shigaraki, and how that he's not over yet, that he's not done yet, that he still has one trick up his sleeve, and we are revealed to be that trick to be Spinner. And this is where the most interesting part of this chapter comes in, because there's a very high possibility that what Spinner is going to do is potentially free Kurogiri that is going to shift the tides of the war against the heroes and potentially lead to Shigaraki being able to go all out using his quirks. So, whatever Spinner does, he has to succeed for Shigaraki's plan to go into fruition and for the villains to have a objective lead in this war. And I think that this is what Horikoshi is going to build towards. So hopefully within the next chapter or two, we're going to be focusing on Spinner. And I think that most likely what's going to happen is that Spinner is going to lose after he succeeds in his plan, or that his loss leads to the success of the villains, which would probably be freeing Kurogiri or having Shigaraki be transferred over to where Kurogiri is, and then they'll have to chase after him with his quirks fully active and him destroying everyone and everything in the vicinity and killing potentially a whole bunch of people. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for this chapter of My Hero Academia. This was an amazing chapter of My Hero Academia for the action, the reveals, the more explanations of the second user's quirk, and just potentially hinting at the fact that we are going to be transferring over to another fight, another location involving Spinner, where we're finally gonna cut away from the fight. I'm just gonna be honest, I'm finally happy. Like, I'm enjoying this fight between Deku and Shigaraki, but I really want to see the other fights. I want to see what's going on with Sarah. I want to see what's going on with Hagakure. I want to see what's going on with Uraraka and Toga, Dabi and Shoto, All for One and Endeavor. I want to see all of these fights, and I think that we are going to be getting those fights very soon. So yeah, this is all I have to say. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you enjoyed this chapter. And if you did, leave a like down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye.